So there are a lot of other functional groups. This is page 15 in your notes. First one are alcohols. Okay, alcohols. So when I write R is just going to be a hydrocarbon. So alcohols have the formula ROH. The R just means there's a whole bunch of carbons attached to it. Okay? The OH is the alcohol functional group. So when you see an O and an H, you name it as an alcohol. It's called a hydroxyl group, but when you're naming it, you name it like an alcohol. So the ending, I'm not going to expect you to know this. You change the ending to, why is my pen not working? To OL. Come on. There we go. So if you have CH3, CH2, OH, what's the parent name? How many carbons do we have? 2. So it'd be ethane, right? You change it to OL. So this is called, ethanol. Or ethyl alcohol is also what it's called. All right? This is the type of alcohol you drink. Yeah. What am I looking? What are you looking at? I didn't add an N. Ethane. ET. Like that's ANE is what it would be, right? You just drop the E and put the OL. Ethanol. Sometimes called ethyl alcohol. That's another way to name it. Whoop. But so OH groups are called alcohols. And just like everything else, you can have multiple functional groups. So if I said propane triol, the tri tells you there's 3, as the 1, 2, 3 here tell you, and they're on carbons 1, 2, and 3. Propane means there's 3 carbons, so it would look like, well, if we do the whatever method, skeleton method, that's carbon 1, 2, 3, carbons 1, 2, 3. So that's the propane, and on carbons 1, 2, 3 you have OL, OH groups. So there's your alcohol. All right. We don't need to worry about that. Okay, next one. If you have carbon double bonded to an oxygen attached to a hydrogen, so these are at the end of molecules. These are called aldehydes. They always occur at the end. They will never be in the middle. All right. They smell, basically. Aldehydes smell. All right. For the most part. Formaldehyde. All right. If I say the word formaldehyde, what do you think?
Vapes.
Sorry?
Vapes.
It's in vapes?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
And
horrendous.
it's also an animal preservative, right?
Yeah, you use it for preservatives. Like if you go into a biology lab, all the little jars with stuff in it, it's formaldehyde that you preserve it with. So there's a type of alcohol called methanol. Meth, 1 carbon. Okay, that's methanol. That's also called paint thinner. All right. If you drink paint thinner, what happens is it gets converted to formaldehyde. All right. Essentially, when you drink it, you're preserving yourself from the inside out, and it makes you go blind. So don't drink paint thinner. Just it's a general warning: don't drink paint thinner. And don't vape. I can't really. It's in vape.
Yeah, that's what the government says. So
Why would that is?
Maybe we shouldn't trust the government.
That's her. Well, I believe.
I mean, it's your
Well,
employer, so
cigarettes have benzene and stuff in them, so I don't know what's worse.
I mean,
Just don't do any of it. How's that? Yeah, don't do either. All right, so aldehydes. C double bonded to an H. Always at the end of a molecule. End of a molecule. A ketone is C double bonded to an oxygen, but unlike an aldehyde that has an H here, it has another carbon. So it's in the middle. A carbon double bonded to an oxygen in the middle of a big chain or something is called a ketone. All right. Most common one you've probably seen before would be acetone. Instead of calling it propanone, you would just call it acetone.
What is that?
That. It's a solvent. It's highly volatile. Use it in. Well, we used it in chemistry labs because here's what we would use it for. It's really. Do you know what volatile means?
Crazy.
Crazy. Oh, okay. In chemistry, volatile means it has a very low boiling point, so it evaporates easily. So when you're washing glassware, how's this? So you clean your glassware, there's always a little bit of water left over in there, right? And if you need to use it right away, and you can't wait for the water to dry, or you just want to make sure all the water is gone, because if you're doing some reaction where you can't have any water in there, I told you the story where I almost blew myself up. Did I not tell you that
I
story?
don't think you did tell us that.
I thought I did.
No, you told us on Halloween you were going to tell us.
And then I never told you?
We kept asking you if you were going to tell
Oh,
us.
okay.
You never told us.
Okay, well, whatever. Might as well tell it now. There's a compound called sodium borohydride, which when it hits water, ignites into flame. Okay? So if you have some glassware, you're going to need to make sure that there's no water in there because you're using something like sodium borohydride that would ignite with the water. And when I say ignites with the flame, like I had Erlenmeyer had one of these things with sodium borohydride in there, which is a liquid. So it was the end of the day. I was tired. I'm cleaning all my glassware. And I just grabbed it and I put it under the sink, like the running water. So the hit in there, this turned in, if you hold it like that, it looks like a rocket. It basically turned into a rocket in my hand and big flames came shooting out. So of course, what did I do? I dropped it, right? But what was I standing over? Sink full of water. So it fell into the water. Some more flames came flying out. It was all over pretty quick because it's a very fast reaction. So if you ever use sodium borohydride, don't do it around water. But anyway, if you're using something like that and you have water in here, and you need to make sure there's no water, what you can do is you can add acetone to it. The acetone is going to bond to the water. Why is the acetone going to bond to the water? This last unit. Sorry? Oh. Because that's partial negative, that's partial positive. And if you have hydrogen on the oxygen, partial positive, partial negative, they're going to form hydrogen bonds, right? So it's going to bond to that. You rinse it with acetone, pulls all the water out. You'll have a little bit of acetone left in there, but because it's very volatile, low boiling point, it'll evaporate quickly. You basically hold it in your hand, it'll evaporate. The heat from your hand will make it evaporate. So it's one way to clean out glassware fairly quickly. All right. It's also a solvent. You can pull stuff out of solutions due to the hydrogen bonding, and then evaporate off the acetone to be left with whatever you pulled out of solution. So it has a few uses. Anyway, I don't remember what I was talking about. Why did we talk about acetone?
You were talking about acetone.
Because I was talking about acetone. All right. So ketones, basically carbon double bonded to an oxygen in the middle of some carbon chain. Carbons on either side. So carbon, carbon with the double bond, that's a ketone. When you're naming ketones, they end in ONE. I'm not going to ask you to name it, but 2-butanone. The ONE tells you it's a ketone. The 2 tells you it's on carbon 2. Just like everything we've learned. All right. Ethers. Ethers just mean there's an oxygen in the middle of your chain, basically. All right. So if you have an oxygen molecule bonded to the 2 carbons in the middle of your chain, that's an ether. Okay. They have this oxy name, methoxy, ethoxy. All right. Ethoxy because F is 2 carbons, 2 carbons, 2 carbons. It's in the middle. Normally people would just say diethyl ether, which is an easier name to sort of understand. All right. Amines. Amines just mean you have an NH group, NH2 or an NH, a nitrogen bonded in there. Amines stink. They stink like fish, a lot of them. All right. So if you ever have pure amines, which I've smelled pure amines, think of rotting fish, but in like a purified form. All right. So you'd only work with them ideally in a fume hood, so you're not stinking up the whole lab. So amines really smell. It's an NH group, and you just name it as a methylamine, dimethylamine. Amides. So you can see there's like tons of different naming here. Is an amine, but you stick a double carbon double bonded to an oxygen right next to it, and that's called an amide. Okay. Again, I'm not going to ask you to name any of these things. Acid. Oh, sorry.
What are you gonna ask?
I'm going to tell you at the end. So we learned about acids right at the beginning of this course. You learned about it earlier, and I may have or may not have said that there's different types of acids. All right. We learned that acids always start with H, right? HCl, HBr, H2SO4. Carboxylic acids do not. They have the form C double bonded to an O bonded to an OH like this. Okay. It's an organic acid. They're not as strong as a lot of the acids we deal with. The what do you call them? The ionic acids, I guess, for lack of a better name. This is acetic acid. This is vinegar. Okay. It's 2 carbons with 2 oxygens and a hydrogen. All right. And then the final one is if I take this hydrogen and replace it with a carbon chain, that's the R there, we call it an ester. All right. Esters smell as well. There's some of the odors. Methylbutanoate, butanoate, ending in ATE indicates it's an ester. It smells like apples, you get apricots, bananas, cherries, orange, pineapple, blah, blah, blah. So this is what, usually when you smell things like this, nice things, I guess, would be an ester, not everything. Gross things, like fish, not that fish is gross, but like not so nice fish, are amines. Okay. Okay. What do I want you to be able to do? Circle the groups. So what I'm going to do is I will give you a molecule. I should come up with a molecule. Let's just type in a molecule. Let's look at a steroid. All right. Let's do this. Okay. This is a base derivative of testosterone. If you see rings like this, boom, 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 and then a pentene here, that's the sort of base structure of testosterone. What functional groups do you see here? What's an OH? It's a hydroxyl group, but what type of name or what type of group is that? Like, how would you name it? We're not going to actually name this, so you don't have to worry. OH is a alcohol. Alcohol group, all right? If you have carbon double bonded to an oxygen, bonded to an OH, that's the last thing I just did, or second to last thing.
Carboxylic acid.
That's an acid, a carboxylic acid. If you have carbon double bonded to an O with carbons on either side of it,
Ketone.
that's a ketone. Okay. There's no amides or anything here. Oh, there's one right here. This doesn't have that would have a hydrogen there. If it's carbon double bonded to an oxygen with a hydrogen on the other side, that is that's an aldehyde. Okay. Remember, this is a group quiz. We're not going to name anything using these functional groups. Basically, if you're going to say that's an alcohol, that's a ketone, that's a acid, I'll be happy. Okay?
So we have to memorize all this.
Memorize it between all of you.
So we have to memorize.
No, you don't have to draw that. I literally will put a molecule in front of you and say, what functional group is this? And let's just narrow it down and say you only have to know those ones on the board. Acid, aldehyde, alcohol, ketone. Sorry? I can't hear you. You want me to put an ester on there? An ester would just be an O and then a Sure.
So what do we have to know? I'm just gonna memorize all.
Acid, alcohol, ketone, ester. And it's group, so basically you're just gonna name a bunch of stuff. That's it. All right. I have a couple of reviews for you, but Chemistry 11 is now complete, peoples.